Ma'am, we don't serve your type here. The words slice through Sterling luxury jewelers like shattered glass. Victoria Sterling freezes, her fingers reaching toward the $15,000 diamond necklace. The white manager's voice echoes across the Madison Avenue showroom, drawing stares from customers. Victoria stands in her own flagship store, crown jewel of a $50 million empire. Her tailored suit costs more than most monthly salaries. The Harvard MBA that built this luxury retail dominance means nothing now. Manager Karen Mitchell crosses her arms, smugly satisfied. 24 security cameras capture every humiliating second. Customers whisper, phones recording what feels wrong. Victoria's pulse quickens, but her face remains composed. She's survived boardroom battles and hostile takeovers. But here, denied service in her own store, prejudice stings deeper. The manager's eyes gleam, mistaking silence for submission. What would you do if this happened to you? Drop your location in the comments. But Victoria Sterling isn't just any customer. She's about to teach the most expensive lesson. Victoria had arrived 30 minutes earlier for an unannounced quality inspection, entering through the main customer entrance like any other patron. She dressed professionally but not ostentatiously, wanting to observe her staff's natural behavior without the artificial performance that accompanies announced CEO visits. Manager Karen Mitchell spotted Victoria immediately. At 38, Karen had built her career on reading customers, categorizing them within seconds of entry. Her internal radar, finely tuned by years in luxury retail, made instant calculations. Clothing quality, jewelry worn, posture, confidence level. But her assessments carried a darker current, assumptions rooted in prejudice she'd never acknowledge aloud. Victoria browsed casually, noting the stark differences in treatment. White customers received immediate attention, champagne service, and personal shopping assistance. A blonde woman in yoga pants got more respect than Victoria in her business attire. The disparity wasn't subtle, it was systematic. Karen's mental checklist ran automatically. Probably can't afford anything here. Likely browsing without buying intention. Possible shoplifting risk. Maintain professional distance while monitoring closely. Victoria examined a display case of tennis bracelets, each piece priced between $8,000 and $25,000. She'd personally selected every item in this collection, choosing pieces that balanced elegance with investment value. The irony wasn't lost, being surveilled while admiring her own curated inventory. Can I help you find something specific? Karen's tone carried the carefully modulated coolness of someone performing customer service while expecting immediate departure. I'm browsing your signature collection, Victoria replied, her voice warm despite the chilly reception. The craftsmanship is exceptional. Karen's smile never reached her eyes. Those pieces require significant investment. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable viewing our starter jewelry section? The suggestion landed like a slap. Victoria maintained her composure, mentally cataloging the microaggression. She'd experienced discrimination before, in boardrooms, at networking events, even from vendors who assumed she wasn't the decision-maker. But being patronized in her own store felt particularly sharp. Other customers pretended not to notice the interaction, but Victoria caught their sideways glances. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed to approve of Karen's protective stance. The dynamics played out exactly as Victoria had studied in discrimination research, bystanders choosing complicity over intervention. Victoria moved toward the premium collection, where pieces started at $50,000. Karen followed at a calculated distance, close enough to intervene but far enough to maintain plausible professionalism. When Victoria asks to speak with the owner, Karen's response crosses every line imaginable. Victoria approaches the signature collection's centerpiece, a $75,000 custom necklace that took 6 months to create. She'd personally worked with the designer, selecting each diamond, approving every detail. Now she stands before her own masterpiece, treated like a potential thief. I'd like to examine this necklace more closely, Victoria says, her tone polite but firm. Karen's response comes wrapped in corporate speak, but the message underneath cuts deep. I'm sorry, but store policy requires additional verification procedures for certain customers viewing our premium pieces. It's nothing personal, just standard protocol. The word certain hangs in the air like poison gas. Victoria knows exactly what it means. Karen has never applied this mythical policy to the white customers Victoria observed receiving VIP treatment moments earlier. "What verification do you require?" Victoria asks, already knowing the answer will reveal more bias. "Well, we need to confirm purchasing capability before allowing handling of pieces in this price range. Perhaps you could provide financial documentation or references from other luxury retailers." The suggestion is breathtaking in its audacity. Victoria realizes Karen is constructing elaborate justifications for what amounts to simple racial profiling. No white customer has been asked for financial references to touch merchandise. Victoria's MBA-trained mind processes the legal implications. Every word from Karen's mouth strengthens a potential discrimination case. The systematic nature of the treatment, coded language, applied inconsistently based on race, creates textbook civil rights violations. "I'd like to speak with the owner or general manager," Victoria says calmly. Karen's laugh contains genuine amusement. "The owners don't typically handle complaints from customers who haven't purchased anything. This is a business, not a museum. If you're serious about buying, we can discuss options within your price range." The condescension in "within your price range" makes several nearby customers visibly uncomfortable. A young couple exchanges concerned glances. An elderly man stops pretending to examine watches, his attention fully focused on the unfolding confrontation. Victoria notices everything: the witnesses, the security cameras recording Karen's every discriminatory word, the staff members watching their manager's performance with varying degrees of comfort. Some look pleased with Karen's firm customer management. Others seem uneasy but unwilling to intervene. "People like you," Karen continues, emboldened by Victoria's continued politeness, "often misunderstand the nature of luxury retail. This isn't a place for casual browsing or social media photos. Our real customers expect a certain atmosphere." Victoria's next request will push Karen to reveal her true nature in front of everyone. "I'd like you to call your corporate office," Victoria says, her voice steady despite the public degradation. "I want to file a formal complaint about the service I'm receiving." Karen's eyes narrow with predatory satisfaction. "Before we involve corporate in what seems like a misunderstanding, I need to follow standard security protocols. Please empty your purse onto the counter." The demand echoes through the showroom like a gunshot. Conversations halt. Customers freeze mid-gesture, champagne glasses suspended in disbelief. The elderly man examining watches openly stares, his mouth slightly agape. Victoria's heart pounds, but her hands remain steady. She knows this moment will define everything that follows. Compliance appears weak but creates irrefutable evidence. Resistance might seem justified, but could complicate legal proceedings. She places her Hermes bag on the marble counter and methodically removes each item. Phone, wallet, keys, lipstick, business cards, breath mints. Each object lands with deliberate precision, while Karen watches with theatrical attention. "This is a routine security check," Karen announces to the gathered audience, her voice carrying across the silent showroom. "We protect all our customers by maintaining strict security standards." A young woman starts recording on her phone, sensing something newsworthy unfolding. Karen notices but doesn't object. She believes she's demonstrating professional customer service rather than systematic discrimination. "Now I need to verify these credit cards," Karen continues, picking up Victoria's Platinum American Express card with obvious skepticism. "We've had issues with fraudulent cards from customers who can't actually afford our merchandise." The accusation of fraud adds criminal implication to the discrimination. Victoria's internal legal training catalogs each escalating violation while she maintains perfect composure. Every word from Karen's mouth strengthens the eventual lawsuit exponentially. Karen makes a show of examining each credit card under a magnifying glass, a procedure that doesn't exist in any legitimate retail security protocol. She holds Victoria's driver's license up to the light, comparing the photo with theatrical suspicion. "Massachusetts license," Karen observes with disdain. "Long way from home. What brings you to our store specifically?" The geographic profiling adds another layer to the systematic discrimination. Victoria realizes Karen is performing for the audience, using her as an example to other undesirable customers who might consider shopping here. Other patrons begin quietly leaving, unwilling to witness further degradation. Their exodus creates its own statement about Karen's behavior, but also removes potential witnesses to the escalating discrimination. "You can wait over there," Karen points to a corner normally reserved for children while parents shop, "while I process your information." When Victoria asks for corporate contact information, Karen makes a statement that seals her fate forever. "I'd like the corporate contact information to file my complaint properly," Victoria requests, maintaining dignity despite the public humiliation. Karen's response drips with condescension. "Corporate doesn't waste time on complaints from people like you. They trust my judgment about problem customers. And frankly, you're the type they'd rather not have in our stores anyway." The statement hangs in the air like a confession. Karen has just admitted to systematic discrimination while revealing corporate knowledge of such practices. Victoria's legal mind immediately recognizes the significance. Karen believes she has organizational support for racial profiling. "You can contact them if you want," Karen continues, scribbling a generic customer service number on a business card. "But don't expect anything to change. We know our clientele, and we protect our business accordingly." Victoria accepts the card with steady hands, her expression unreadable. Inside, she's making calculations that will transform this humiliation into industry-changing precedent. Every discriminatory word creates legal liability that extends far beyond Karen's individual employment. "I'll wait outside while you process my information," Victoria says, her tone suggesting defeat rather than strategy. Karen's satisfied smirk reveals her belief that she's successfully intimidated an unwanted customer into submission. "Take your time deciding if you really want to pursue this. Sometimes it's better to accept that certain stores aren't meant for certain people." Victoria steps onto Madison Avenue, the cool autumn air hitting her face like a reset button. She walks 20 feet from the entrance, ensuring privacy, then activates her phone's recording function and dials her head of legal affairs. "Daniel, it's Victoria. I need you to listen carefully and document everything I'm about to tell you." Her voice transforms from victim to CEO in an instant. "I'm currently experiencing systematic racial discrimination at our Madison Avenue flagship store." She provides a real-time briefing while maintaining her cover as a rejected customer. Daniel's sharp intake of breath when she describes Karen's behavior confirms the legal severity of the situation. "Preserve all security footage from the past hour," Victoria instructs. "Contact HR to begin termination proceedings, but don't act until I give the signal. I want maximum documentation of discriminatory behavior before revealing my identity." Through the store's window, Victoria watches Karen bragging to staff about handling the situation professionally. The manager gestures dismissively while describing Victoria as one of those customers who thinks they belong everywhere. Victoria's assistant calls to confirm the legal team's mobilization. Within 30 minutes, lawyers will be positioned nearby, ready to document Karen's termination and begin civil rights proceedings. The systematic nature of the discrimination elevates this beyond individual bias into corporate liability territory. "This isn't just about my experience," Victoria tells Daniel. "This is about every customer who's been discriminated against in luxury retail. We're going to use this as a catalyst for industry-wide reform." She watches Karen through the window, still performing for her staff audience, completely unaware that her career ended the moment she revealed her true character to the wrong customer. Victoria re-enters the store with renewed purpose, her demeanor suggesting someone who's accepted her place, rather than someone plotting systematic justice. Karen looks up from her conversation with staff members, barely concealing her irritation at the customer's return. "I've decided I'd like to make a purchase after all," Victoria announces, her voice carrying just enough resignation to feed Karen's ego. "I'm interested in your most expensive engagement ring set." Karen's eyebrows arch with theatrical disbelief. "Our premium engagement collection starts at $75,000. That's quite a significant investment for someone who needed to verify their credit cards." The condescension in Karen's voice draws fresh attention from remaining customers. A well-dressed couple near the watch display exchange uncomfortable glances, clearly questioning the appropriateness of the manager's tone. Victoria approaches the engagement ring display case with deliberate confidence. "I'd like to see the custom set in the center, the one with the 3-carat center stone." "Ma'am," Karen's voice takes on the patient tone used with difficult children, That piece costs $75,000. Perhaps we should start with something more realistic for your situation. Victoria produces her Platinum American Express Black Card, a payment method that requires invitation and significant asset verification. Will this be sufficient? Karen examines the card with exaggerated skepticism, holding it up to the light as if detecting forgery. These cards can be easily counterfeited. We've had numerous incidents with people like you presenting fraudulent payment methods. The phrase, people like you, echoes through the showroom again, its discriminatory meaning unmistakable to every witness. A young professional woman near the pearl display starts recording discreetly on her phone, sensing she's documenting something significant. I also have cash, Victoria adds, producing a money clip containing several $1,000 bills, more than enough for a substantial deposit on any piece in the store. Karen's reaction defies basic business logic. Instead of welcoming a substantial sale, she becomes more suspicious and hostile. Cash transactions of this size raise red flags about money laundering. Where exactly did you acquire this amount of currency? The accusation of criminal activity represents a new escalation in Karen's discriminatory behavior. Victoria's legal training recognizes this as crossing from civil rights violations into potential defamation territory, accusations of criminal conduct without evidence. I think it's best if you consider shopping at establishments more suited to your demographic, Karen continues, her voice gaining confidence from perceived authority. There are several affordable jewelry stores in less exclusive neighborhoods that might better serve your needs. The geographic and economic discrimination adds layers to Karen's systematic bias. She's not just profiling based on race, but making assumptions about Victoria's residence, income, and social status, all illegal under federal anti-discrimination laws. Victoria maintains perfect composure while internally cataloging each violation. Karen's behavior has evolved from subtle bias to overt discrimination, creating irrefutable legal evidence with every passing moment. Karen's next move will cross the final line that triggers Victoria's devastating response. Karen reaches for the store's phone with theatrical authority. "Security, I need an escort for a customer who's becoming disruptive," she announces loudly enough for everyone to hear, despite Victoria standing quietly by the engagement ring display. The security guard, a middle-aged black man named Marcus, approaches with obvious reluctance. His eyes meet Victoria's briefly, and she sees his discomfort with the situation. He's following orders but questioning their legitimacy. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises," Marcus says quietly, his tone apologetic rather than authoritative. Victoria nods gracefully. "Of course. I understand you're doing your job." Karen steps forward, unwilling to let the moment pass without maximum humiliation. "This customer is now permanently banned from all Sterling luxury locations. I'm documenting her description in our problem customer database." She makes a theatrical show of writing Victoria's details in a leather-bound book, speaking each observation aloud. 5'6", brown skin, professional attire, claims to have expensive credit cards, but exhibits suspicious behavior patterns. The remaining customers watch in stunned silence. Several begin quietly gathering their belongings, unwilling to continue shopping in an establishment that operates with such obvious bias. Their exodus speaks volumes about Karen's impact on the store's atmosphere. "I want every staff member to recognize this individual," Karen continues, holding up Victoria's driver's license like evidence in a criminal trial. "She represents the type of customer who damages our reputation through false discrimination claims and fraudulent purchasing attempts." A young sales associate shifts uncomfortably, clearly disturbed by Karen's performance. Another staff member nods approvingly, revealing the depth of bias within the store's culture. Karen's confidence peaks as she perceives Victoria's compliance as validation of her authority. "Some people need to learn that luxury retail isn't for everyone. We maintain standards here, and those standards protect our legitimate customers." Victoria follows Marcus toward the exit, her movements calm and dignified despite the public humiliation. She notices every detail, the customers leaving in disgust, the staff members dividing into camps of approval and discomfort, the security cameras capturing everything. "Sometimes," Karen calls after her, "the best service we can provide is honesty about where people belong." The statement carries across the nearly empty showroom a final declaration of discriminatory philosophy that will soon become evidence in federal court. As security escorts Victoria toward the exit, she makes one phone call that changes everything forever. At the store entrance, Victoria pauses and retrieves her phone with the defeated gesture of someone making a last-ditch complaint to corporate headquarters. Marcus stands nearby, clearly uncomfortable with his role in the discriminatory episode but bound by workplace hierarchy. "I'd like to report a discrimination incident at Sterling Luxury Jewelers," Victoria says loudly enough for Karen to overhear from across the showroom. "This is regarding your Madison Avenue flagship location." Karen's laughter carries across the nearly empty store. "Good luck with that complaint, honey. Corporate knows exactly how I handle problem customers, and they support my methods completely." Victoria continues her call with apparent desperation. "I need an immediate board meeting regarding serious civil rights violations at the Madison Avenue store. Yes, I understand the severity of such accusations." "Listen to that," Karen tells her remaining staff, gesturing dismissively toward Victoria. "She actually thinks threatening board meetings will intimidate us. These people watch too many movies about corporate accountability." Victoria's tone shifts subtly as she speaks into the phone. "Send the emergency response team immediately. We have a Code 7 situation requiring immediate executive intervention." Karen's mockery intensifies. "Code 7? What kind of corporate nonsense is that? Next, she'll claim to know the CEO personally." Within minutes, a black sedan pulls up outside the store. Victoria's executive assistant, Sarah Chen, emerges carrying a briefcase and folder. She approaches Victoria with formal deference that immediately catches Karen's attention. "Ms. Sterling," Sarah says clearly, her voice carrying through the store's open entrance, "I have the documentation you requested, along with the master keys for this location." Karen's confident expression falters slightly as she processes the formal address and the mention of master keys. Store employees begin gathering near the windows, sensing something significant unfolding. Sarah hands Victoria a set of keys that Karen recognizes, the master access keys that only upper management possesses. The assistant's respectful demeanor toward the problem customer creates cognitive dissonance that Karen struggles to process. "There must be some mistake," Karen mutters, moving closer to the entrance. "Those keys belong to corporate management, not customers." Victoria accepts the keys with the natural authority of someone who belongs in possession of them. Her entire demeanor begins shifting from victim to executive as she prepares to reveal the truth. When Victoria finally speaks her next words, Karen's world collapses in an instant. "I'm Victoria Sterling, CEO and founder of Sterling Luxury Jewelers." The words hit the showroom like a physical force. "You just discriminated against your boss in front of 24 security cameras." Karen's face drains of all color. Her mouth opens and closes soundlessly as her brain struggles to process the impossible reversal. The confident manager who moments ago was banning a customer now faces the woman who signs her paychecks. Victoria produces her corporate identification card, holding it steady while Karen's hands visibly tremble. "I was conducting an unannounced quality assessment when your systematic discrimination derailed the evaluation into a federal civil rights case." That's impossible," Karen whispers, her voice barely audible. "You can't be... The CEO would never..." "Would never what, Karen? Be black? Visit her own stores? Experience the discrimination you've clearly perfected?" Victoria's tone remains calm, but authority radiates from every word. "Let me recite your violations: racial profiling, discriminatory service policies, fraudulent accusations, and systematic civil rights violations." The remaining staff members freeze in horror as they realize their complicity in discriminating against the company's founder. Several employees who earlier nodded approval at Karen's behavior now back away, desperately trying to distance themselves from the situation. Victoria walks through the store with the natural confidence of ownership, pointing to details only the CEO would know. "I personally selected every piece in the signature collection. I designed this security system. I wrote the customer service protocols you've systematically violated." Karen's attempts at damage control only worsen her situation. "Ms. Sterling, I had no idea. If you had identified yourself initially..." So discrimination is acceptable unless the victim has sufficient authority? Victoria's question cuts through Karen's excuse with surgical precision. Your behavior reveals exactly what you think of customers who look like me. Marcus, the security guard, steps forward with visible relief. Ma'am, I want it on record that I questioned these orders. Something felt wrong about the whole situation. Victoria nods approvingly. Your instincts were correct, Marcus. Professional integrity means questioning discriminatory instructions, not blindly following them. Karen's world continues imploding as she realizes every confident statement about corporate support was wrong. Her careful discrimination wasn't professionally protective, it was systematic bias against her own employer. The legal department is already preparing documentation, Victoria continues. Your actions created liability for wrongful termination suits from any minority employees you've discriminated against, federal civil rights violations, and potential criminal charges for systematic bias. Sarah approaches with legal documents. The employment termination paperwork is ready for your signature, Ms. Sterling. Have you ever witnessed workplace discrimination? Share your story below. Karen's desperate attempts to save her career only make her legal situation exponentially worse. Victoria's legal team arrives within 30 minutes. 3 attorneys led by Daniel Morrison, Sterling Luxury's chief counsel. Karen watches in mounting horror as they set up equipment to formally document her termination and begin civil rights proceedings. Ms. Mitchell, Daniel addresses Karen with clinical formality. You're being terminated immediately for systematic discrimination against customers and violation of federal civil rights statutes. Your actions created legal liability that extends far beyond employment law. Karen's desperation explodes into frantic justification. I was protecting company assets. I followed standard security protocols for suspicious customers. This is reverse discrimination. Her protests only provide additional evidence. Daniel's recording device captures every word as Karen reveals the depth of her bias through attempted self-defense. Let me clarify your legal exposure, Daniel continues methodically. Federal civil rights violations carry personal liability separate from employment consequences. Your systematic discrimination pattern creates potential criminal charges. Victoria activates Sterling Luxury's crisis management protocols with surgical precision. Conduct immediate interviews with all staff. I want documentation of every discriminatory incident Karen may have orchestrated. This wasn't isolated behavior, it was systematic bias. The HR director, summoned from corporate headquarters, begins individual employee interviews in a private office. Within an hour, a disturbing pattern emerges. 3 employees report previous incidents where Karen discouraged minority customers through professional discrimination techniques. She told us to monitor certain customers more closely, reveals a young sales associate during her interview. She never said it was about race, but the pattern was obvious. We were afraid to report it because Karen controlled our schedules and commissions. Karen's careful avoidance of explicit racial language doesn't protect her from civil rights liability. The systematic nature of her discrimination, documented through security footage and employee testimony, creates a federal case with devastating implications. Victoria's legal team reviews months of security footage, using statistical analysis to document Karen's discriminatory patterns. The evidence is overwhelming. Minority customers received substantially different treatment, with Karen orchestrating most incidents personally. Your discrimination cost this company immediate revenue, customer loyalty, and created massive legal expenses, Victoria tells Karen during the formal termination meeting. In one day, your bias cost more than your annual salary. Sterling Luxury's public relations team crafts a response highlighting Victoria's leadership in transforming personal discrimination into industry reform. Rather than hiding the incident, the company publicizes their zero-tolerance response as a model for other luxury retailers. The financial implications cascade beyond Karen's immediate termination. Her actions triggered a comprehensive audit of company practices, mandatory bias training for all employees, and implementation of anonymous reporting systems for discrimination concerns. We're creating educational materials from this incident, Victoria explains to her executive team. Karen's case will become required training for every manager in luxury retail who wants to understand the legal consequences of workplace bias. Other luxury retailers contact Sterling Luxury within days, requesting discrimination prevention training. Victoria's experience becomes a catalyst for industry-wide policy changes as companies realize the legal and financial risks of biased employees. Karen's attorney explains her untenable legal position during their consultation. Your employer-directed discrimination actually increases your exposure rather than providing protection. Discriminating against the CEO creates additional liability layers that make your case legally indefensible. The systematic documentation Victoria gathered creates template legal approaches for future discrimination cases. Her strategic patience during the incident provided irrefutable evidence that will influence civil rights law for years. Federal investigators contact Sterling Luxury to discuss Karen's case as a model for systematic discrimination prosecution. The comprehensive evidence Victoria collected transforms individual bias into legal precedent with national implications. This case represents perfect documentation of systematic retail discrimination, the federal attorney explains. Ms. Sterling's strategic response created evidence that will protect future victims and hold employers accountable for managerial bias. Sterling Luxury implements technology solutions, analyzing customer service patterns to identify discriminatory behavior before it escalates. The bias detection system becomes an industry standard, generating revenue while preventing discrimination. Victoria testifies before congressional committees about retail discrimination, using her personal experience to advocate for stronger civil rights enforcement. Her CEO status gives her testimony unique authority in policy discussions. The incident transforms Sterling Luxury's corporate culture entirely. Anonymous reporting systems reveal previous discrimination incidents that were hidden by fear of retaliation. The company's commitment to addressing systematic bias attracts diverse clientele and top-tier employees. Karen's termination hearing reveals the shocking extent of her discriminatory pattern. Karen's formal termination hearing takes place in Sterling Luxury's corporate boardroom, where she once aspired to present quarterly reports. Now she sits across from a panel of executives, legal counsel, and HR representatives who will determine her fate and legal exposure. Daniel Morrison opens with devastating efficiency. Our investigation reveals a 3-year pattern of systematic discrimination disguised as professional customer service. Security footage analysis shows statistically significant disparities in treatment based on customer race. The evidence presentation destroys any remaining illusion of Karen's professionalism. Video compilations show her consistently hovering around minority customers while ignoring white patrons, requesting additional verification from Black and Hispanic shoppers, and using coded language to discourage undesirable clientele. "I was protecting company profits," Karen insists, her voice cracking with desperation. "Certain demographics have higher theft rates. I was using loss prevention strategies, not racial profiling." Her defense only deepens her legal exposure. The panel exchanges glances as Karen inadvertently admits to statistical racial profiling, a clear civil rights violation that transforms her discrimination from implicit bias into deliberate policy. "Ms. Mitchell," the HR director interjects, "can you explain why your loss prevention strategies never applied to white customers, regardless of their behavior or appearance?" Karen's silence speaks volumes. She realizes her justifications are creating additional legal liability rather than providing protection. Employee testimony reveals the toxic culture Karen cultivated. Staff members describe training sessions where she taught customer assessment techniques that amounted to racial profiling instruction manual. "She told us to trust our instincts about customers," testifies a former sales associate. But her examples always involved minorities. She created an environment where discrimination felt like professional duty. Karen's attorney attempts damage control, but the evidence is overwhelming. "My client's actions, while misguided, stemmed from overzealous commitment to company security rather than malicious intent." Victoria addresses the panel with the authority of someone who's transformed personal pain into systematic progress. Intent becomes irrelevant when actions create systematic civil rights violations. Karen's impact extends far beyond individual incidents to cultural contamination of our entire organization. The hearing reveals Karen's financial exposure extends beyond employment termination. Personal liability for civil rights violations could result in significant monetary damages, potential criminal charges, and permanent career destruction in retail management. Your actions violated multiple federal statutes, Daniel explains to Karen with clinical precision. The systematic nature of your discrimination elevates this beyond individual bias into organized civil rights violations. Karen's professional reputation dissolves as industry contacts distance themselves from association with documented discrimination. Her LinkedIn profile becomes a cautionary tale as recruitment firms add her name to do not hire databases. The psychological evaluation reveals Karen's inability to accept responsibility for obvious discriminatory behavior. Her testimony demonstrates deep-seated biases she's rationalized as professional judgment, highlighting the need for mandatory bias training in retail management. "I maintained professional standards," Karen insists during her final statement. "If being selective about clientele is discrimination, then every luxury retailer is guilty." Her words provide the perfect conclusion to the termination proceedings, a clear admission that she views discrimination as standard business practice rather than civil rights violation. The panel's decision is unanimous. Immediate termination for cause, forfeiture of severance benefits, and cooperation with federal civil rights investigation. Karen's retail management career ends with permanent industry blacklisting. Victoria's systematic reforms transform the entire luxury retail industry. Victoria leverages her discrimination experience to spearhead comprehensive industry transformation. Sterling Luxury becomes the gold standard for inclusive luxury retail, with competitors scrambling to implement similar anti-bias protocols before facing their own discrimination scandals. The National Retail Federation invites Victoria to deliver the keynote address at their annual convention. Her presentation, "The True Cost of Discrimination," uses Karen's case to demonstrate how bias destroys profitability, brand reputation, and legal standing. The audience of retail executives realizes that discrimination isn't just morally wrong, it's financially catastrophic. Harvard Business School develops a comprehensive case study titled "Sterling Luxury: From Discrimination to Industry Leadership." Victoria's strategic response becomes required curriculum in business ethics courses, teaching future executives about converting personal challenges into systematic solutions. Federal legislation citing Karen's case establishes stronger penalties for retail discrimination. The Sterling Standards Act requires bias training for luxury retail management and creates anonymous reporting systems for customer discrimination complaints. Victoria testifies before Congress, using her CEO authority to advocate for comprehensive civil rights enforcement. Sterling Luxury's anti-discrimination training program becomes a $50 million revenue stream as other retailers purchase the curriculum. Victoria transforms her personal discrimination into profitable educational content that prevents similar incidents across the industry. Technology companies partner with Sterling Luxury to develop bias detection software, analyzing customer service patterns. The artificial intelligence system identifies discriminatory behavior before it escalates, becoming standard equipment in major retail chains nationwide. The luxury retail industry experiences seismic cultural change as companies realize the legal and financial risks of biased employees. Karen's case becomes shorthand for discrimination liability, with pulling a Mitchell entering industry vocabulary as synonymous with career-ending bias. Legal precedents from Karen's termination strengthen customer protection in retail environments. Civil rights attorneys use Victoria's comprehensive documentation as a template for future discrimination cases, resulting in successful prosecutions of systematic bias across multiple industries. Victoria's story influences retail architecture and design. Stores implement transparent customer service protocols, visible security policies, and environmental changes that reduce opportunities for discriminatory treatment. The physical retail environment evolves to support inclusive practices. Academic research programs study Victoria's strategic response to discrimination as a model for converting personal trauma into social progress. Universities develop curricula teaching advocacy skills, legal documentation, and systematic reform strategies based on her experience. The incident's impact extends beyond retail into hospitality, banking, and real estate industries. Victoria's approach becomes a blueprint for executives facing discrimination. demonstrating how strategic patience and comprehensive documentation create lasting change rather than temporary vindication. Should there be stricter penalties for workplace racism? Let us know what you think. International luxury brands adopt Sterling Luxury's inclusive practices to compete in diverse markets. Victoria's discrimination experience becomes a case study in global business schools, teaching cultural sensitivity and legal compliance across different societies. 5 years later, Victoria's quiet victory has transformed an entire industry. 5 years after the discrimination incident, Victoria stands in the renovated Madison Avenue flagship store, now featuring prominently displayed diversity and inclusion commitments alongside the luxury jewelry collections. The space has been transformed from a site of humiliation into a symbol of industry progress. Karen's former position is now held by Marcus Thompson, the security guard who questioned the discriminatory orders. His promotion to Diversity and Inclusion Manager represents Victoria's commitment to elevating employees who demonstrate moral courage over those who blindly follow biased instructions. The store's customer demographics have dramatically expanded, with minority customers comprising 40% of the high-end clientele. Victoria's personal discrimination experience attracted diverse luxury shoppers who appreciate shopping in an environment with demonstrated commitment to equal treatment. Sterling Luxury's revenue increased 30% in the 5 years following the incident, proving that inclusive practices generate superior business results. The company's anti-discrimination stance became a competitive advantage, attracting customers who value ethical business practices alongside luxury products. Victoria reflects on how her strategic patience during the discrimination created more lasting change than immediate emotional responses would have achieved. Her calm handling of extreme provocation demonstrated executive leadership under pressure while gathering irrefutable evidence for systematic reform. Letters from customers who felt welcomed in luxury retail environments for the first time provide Victoria's greatest satisfaction. A young professional writes about purchasing her first designer jewelry without experiencing discrimination. An elderly man describes bringing his daughter to Sterling Luxury because he trusts the inclusive environment. The educational impact extends far beyond retail. Victoria's story became required reading in business schools, law schools, and civil rights training programs. Her strategic response to discrimination teaches future leaders about converting personal challenges into systematic solutions. Harvard Business School's case study on Victoria's experience has been taught to over 50,000 students worldwide. The curriculum demonstrates how individual discrimination can become a catalyst for industry-wide transformation when handled with strategic intelligence rather than reactive emotion. The legal precedents established through Karen's case have protected hundreds of customers from retail discrimination. Civil rights attorneys reference Victoria's comprehensive documentation in successful prosecution of systematic bias across multiple industries. Victoria's discrimination experience strengthened her leadership philosophy. Strategic patience combined with decisive action creates more sustainable change than immediate vindication. Her approach became a model for executives facing workplace bias in any industry. The technology solutions developed from Victoria's experience prevent discrimination before it occurs, rather than punishing it afterward. Bias detection systems analyze customer service patterns in real time, alerting managers to potential discriminatory behavior and creating intervention opportunities. Sterling Luxury's commitment to inclusive practices attracted top-tier employees who want to work for companies with demonstrated values. The discrimination incident became a recruitment advantage, proving that ethical leadership creates business success alongside social progress. Victoria's personal satisfaction comes from knowing that her painful experience prevented thousands of other customers from facing similar discrimination. Her strategic response transformed individual humiliation into protective systems benefiting entire communities. The moral foundation remains simple but powerful. Strategic patience and comprehensive documentation transform discrimination from personal trauma into systematic progress. Discrimination reveals the discriminator's character, not the victim's worth. True power lies in strategic patience combined with decisive justice. Victoria's transformation of personal discrimination into industry-wide reform demonstrates the power of strategic thinking under extreme pressure. Her experience proves that individual courage combined with systematic documentation can create lasting change affecting thousands of future customers and employees. The Sterling luxury case became a blueprint for converting workplace bias into protective legislation, educational curricula, and business practices that prevent discrimination before it occurs. Victoria's calm response to humiliation created legal precedents, technology solutions, and cultural changes extending far beyond luxury retail. Should there be stricter penalties for workplace racism? Let us know what you think. Share your own experiences with workplace or retail discrimination in the comments below. Your stories contribute to ongoing conversations about bias prevention and create awareness that protects others from similar treatment. Every documented incident adds to the growing body of evidence supporting stronger anti-discrimination enforcement. Discuss effective strategies for responding to discrimination when it occurs. Victoria's approach, strategic patience combined with comprehensive documentation, may not work in every situation, but her methods created maximum legal protection while gathering irrefutable evidence for systematic reform. The conversation extends beyond individual experiences to policy solutions. What additional legal protections should exist for customers facing retail discrimination? How can technology better identify and prevent bias before it escalates? Your perspectives shape future discrimination prevention strategies. Victoria's story resonates across industries beyond retail. Healthcare, banking, real estate, and hospitality sectors all struggle with systematic bias that requires strategic responses similar to Victoria's approach. Share experiences from other industries to broaden the discrimination prevention conversation. The education component remains crucial for lasting change. Business schools, law programs, and corporate training curricula incorporate real discrimination cases like Victoria's to teach future leaders about the legal, financial, and moral consequences of workplace bias. Social media amplification transforms individual discrimination stories into movements for systematic change. Share this story using hashtags like #justice in retail and #inclusive business to reach audiences who can implement similar reforms in their own organizations. The next installment in our Justice series examines another case of systematic bias meeting strategic resistance. Homeless veteran denied job interview, then they discovered his military record. You won't believe the transformation that occurred when the CEO learned the truth about the decorated combat veteran they turned away based on appearance alone. That story reveals how assumptions about homeless individuals mask extraordinary qualifications and service records. A former Special Forces officer's strategic response to employment discrimination creates policy changes affecting veteran hiring practices nationwide. The upcoming narrative demonstrates how personal dignity under extreme adversity can expose systematic bias while creating protective systems for vulnerable populations. Strategic documentation and patient advocacy transform individual rejection into industry-wide veteran employment reform. Subscribe and enable notifications to continue following stories where strategic intelligence conquers systematic bias. These cases provide blueprints for converting personal discrimination into protective policies that benefit entire communities. The conversation continues in comments, where your experiences and perspectives contribute to growing awareness about discrimination prevention. Share where you're watching from and how bias affects your community. Every story strengthens the movement towards systematic equality. Discrimination dies when courage meets strategy. Patience today, justice tomorrow.